In 1 Samuel today, we read a very strange passage. It is the passage of what happens after the great adventure of David and Goliath. And it's a frightening, dark passage in which Saul, being jealous of the way in which the people proclaim David, who has killed his tens of thousands, over and against himself, Saul, who has only killed his thousands. Saul is bitter with rage and jealousy. He twice tries to kill David right in his own house by throwing a spear at him. And goodness knows how you dodge a spear inside of a house. But the sad part is where it says that God took his spirit away from Saul and then put his spirit in David. And the concept of God taking his spirit away from you is dreadful and awful. To know how we got to that point, we need to look a little bit at the events of the month leading up to that terrible day. And you know a lot about this story. This is the one where Goliath, the giant of Gath, comes out and stands on the field in between the armies of Israel and of the Philistines, and he shouts out to them, "Is there one man among you who will fight me?" And then he gives out the challenge, "If you send your champion out, and if he defeats me, we will be your servants, and likewise if I defeat him." And of course, all the soldiers of Israel stare at this giant, and they are terrified, and nobody will go out to fight. Before I go on, let me tell you a little bit about the Philistines, because we have grossly misunderstood who they are. Today, if you want to accuse someone of being barbaric or ignorant or primitive, you say that they are a Philistine. But in fact, the exact opposite is true. The Philistines were far advanced in terms of culture and civilization than the people of Israel. And that's because the Philistines were Greek. They had sailed from Greece perhaps 10 generations earlier, but they had brought with them all the culture, all the learning, and all the technological sophistication of the mighty Greek Empire which had existed for 1,000 years. Meanwhile, the Israelites had no technology and very little civilization. After all, they had spent generations as slaves, and then they had spent generations as exiles. They had no time for developing a culture or a technology. They were busy simply trying to survive. So the Philistines were far advanced of the Israelites by this point. They had built and populated 5 cities in what is now the Gaza Strip: Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, Gaza, and Gath. All of them well-developed, civilized civic centers. So there Goliath stands, he challenges the people of Israel, and they are very afraid. The next question you might ask is this: was Goliath a giant? Did such things as giants exist in that day? And that's a hard question. I can't give a definitive answer, but I can say this. Joshua and Judges and both the books of the Chronicles and both books of Samuel talk about a race of giants, the descendants of Anak, the Anakim. And Anak, as you might guess, was a great Greek warrior from whom the Philistines had descended. And it stands to reason, and there is good evidence, that the Greeks, in fact, for 1,000 years had used selective breeding in order to create a nation of perfect perfect warriors. That is to say that for 1,000 years they had bred the biggest, strongest men with the biggest, strongest women with the intent of making giants. And it's likely they had, to some extent, succeeded in that. The descendants of Anak, the Anakim, are mentioned in 6 books of the Bible, and it states specifically the Philistines were the descendants of the Greek giant Anak.